This is the guy. Thanks, that's a surprise. Yeah, I know, it's a really bold title, and I did that consciously. My name is Krishna. I figured go big or go home, right? My name is Krishna Sampath. I'm the program manager for a program called A100, which takes students who are interested in software development and provides them with some training, gets them ready to work at startups. And today I will teach you to program in 5 minutes. Don't believe me? How many of you already are programmers? Raise your hands. What are you programming? Java. All right, that's a great language. Anyone else? Throw one out. WordPress, all right, totally acceptable. So a lot of you are already code warriors. You think of you, and most of you probably, when I said how many of you are programmers, pictured something like this, code, right? But I'm gonna let you in on a secret. In fact, many more of you are programmers. That's right, all of you are programmers in some sense. Don't believe me? Believe Leslie, no. So how many of you have ever written down a recipe for a friend? That's a program, done. Check, I'm out. So why is a recipe a program? Well, it's got a set of ingredients up at the top. It's got a set of instructions that you follow, and if you execute them properly, you get something tasty at the bottom, or ice cubes, which of course are tremendously useful if you're going to be making a martini, which will pop up there. If you wrote a traditional martini recipe, of course, but what happens if you messed it up a little bit and did this? Well, your friend who's following the directions might get whiskey instead of a martini, which is great if she likes whiskey. But she might get something terrible if she follows your directions and they were bad, right? What if you wrote preheat the oven and you didn't specify 375 degrees and she chose 200? What would happen? This would probably happen. The point I'm making is ambiguity is not great in recipes, and it's not great in computer programs either. Pinch of salt. So humans are usually pretty good at interpreting ambiguity. We know better than to do this, but you know who doesn't know better than to do this? A computer. When you program a computer, it is essentially like you're telling a robot cook a set of instructions and that they have to follow it. So you have to break it down really simply. How do you break it down? That's the rub, right? So they don't follow instructions and take in ingredients. But it's kind of like a recipe still, right? Because what they're good at doing is taking an instruction and executing it over and over and over and over again, which we're not so good at. We get inconsistency. They need variables, which are kind of containers. You remember them from algebra, of course. They can store x equals 10, for example. But they can also store words, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. They can store cookies, or at least some sort of representation of cookies. So if you're playing an adventure game and you walk into a room and you walk into a next room and there's a cookie jar and you reach in and you take one and you look at it, that's a cookie. It's stored inside of a variable, right? The other thing we use, just as we use steps in a recipe, we use functions to take variables and manipulate them. And once again, you might remember this from algebra class, but you also remember it from just common sense. You take two things and mix them together and you get something cool and new, right? So take 3 fruits, blend them together, boom, you can sell that for $6 at a farmer's market. Or you can get ripped off for $6 at a farmer's market. So that's how functions interact with variables. Here's a really simple example. Quote is a variable. It's storing Ignite Stanford. I use the function print to print it to the screen. This is the language Python, by the way. Then I call the function uppercase, attach an exclamation point, and bang! What have I done? I've ignited Stanford. Truly, this is a powerful thing. I know, some of you are saying, well, couldn't I just do that with Microsoft Word? Hit bold, maybe uppercase, right? Stuff like that. Yeah, you could. But it's a lot more fun to learn stuff, right? Creating computer programs is like solving puzzles. And as an inveterate puzzler, I think it's pretty fun. The other thing is, once you learn how to program, just like when you learn how to cook, food tastes better, right? You know what goes into it. When you learn how to code a little bit, actually software becomes more transparent. You get to use it better, and that's pretty awesome because we use it every day. Here are some resources. That Codable actually is written for children who are too young to read, so you have no excuse. Also, I'm a lawyer and I learned how to program, so really you have no excuse. I host a weekly meetup called Study Hall. I invite all of you to come. It's free. It actually probably goes till 8:30 most nights. But this is just an example of code that I think probably you don't need any walkthrough to get through. Thank you very much for having me.